I am just back from PRI 2025. Perhaps you've attended the show before. Perhaps you've only heard about the show and dreamed about going. In this episode of the Late to Grid podcast, I'm going to share everything that went down for us at 2025 PRI. Let's throw the green flag on this episode. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Late to Grid podcast. As I mentioned, just back from PRI, and if you were there, you knew it was very snowy on the way out. If you were there, you know it was very crowded. But if you weren't there, I'm going to share all my perspectives, everything I learned, and tell you a little bit more about the PRI show. So first, if you don't know what it is or there's still confusion about it, Performance Racing Industry. It's owned by the SEMA organization, and every year they put on a racing show in Indianapolis. Now, over the years, it's been in some other locations like Orlando, and there was a lot of talk this year about the history of the show and how awesome it is to have it in Indiana, specifically the motor racing capital of the world, Indianapolis. In fact, the governor talked a little bit at the opening breakfast. I'm going to talk about the breakfast in a little bit. Michael Good, the president of PRI, talked about how awesome it is to have it in Indianapolis as well. So first, let's level set. It is over, I think it's 1 million square feet of exhibitor space. The entire convention center in downtown Indianapolis is filled wall to wall, plus Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Indianapolis Colts play. The entire field is transformed, and this year it had race haulers, it had trailers, it had a huge sim racing experience there as well. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. Over 1,000 exhibitors, and this year 161 new exhibitors. Talk about growth in our industry. That is absolutely awesome, and tens of thousands of attendees. So who can attend? Well, anybody actually can. There's a couple of different types of memberships. You have a individual membership, $40 a year, and you are in. And then there's business memberships that start off at $395 and go up to $995. Atomic Autosports, of course, is a member, been a member since 2022. And why would you join as an individual member? PRI does a lot for our industry. When tracks are fighting for their lives because of legislation and regulations, PRI is there. When our industry is under attack at the state, local, or even federal level, PRI is there to back us up. So your $40 goes a long way. Plus, it gets you into the coolest show around where you can learn about everything racing, whether you're doing drag racing, you're doing road racing, time trials, autocross, whatever it is represented there. This is my favorite show ever. I've been to SEMA. I've attended Apex during SEMA. I've been to trade shows in the telecommunications space, the franchise space, the automotive aftermarket space. No matter where I've been and shows I participated in, spoke at, exhibited at, PRI is hands down my favorite. You know why? It's where business gets done. It's where you learn about what's going on in our industry. It's where you can attend educational seminars to make yourself better. I have a saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I took the entire Atomic Autosports team. So we had Brian, Matt, and Sam, and myself all there to do just that, to learn, to network, and to grow. And again, you don't have to be a big company to be there as a PRI member. Again, $395 is the opening membership, and it gets you so much. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. So I got so many notes here. I want to make sure I talk about everything. So this is either my 5th or 6th PRI. I got to go back and count my badges, and every year it gets better and better. And I'm going to share a little personal note with you. Like you, I'm busy. I'm busy with work. I'm busy with family. The show falls in December. There's a lot of holiday things going on, a lot of year-end planning for the businesses. There was a point where I was like, I don't know, maybe I don't go. I was actually a little bit under the weather too. And I got to tell you, about 3 hours into the first day on Thursday, I couldn't believe I thought about even skipping it. That's how powerful this show is. Just a couple hours there, it was amazing. So we roll in Wednesday night, because I want to tell you about the breakfast in a minute, but we roll in Thursday night, got a couple hotel rooms out by the airport, and the Atomic Autosports crew, we just jumped in my room, and we were all kind of sitting around talking. It probably was 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. First thing I do, I jump on Facebook Marketplace. And I want you to listen to the end of this episode because I have what I think is the coolest part of this trip to PRI to tell you about. It happened on my final day there, and it started Thursday night. Because like I said, I jumped on Marketplace and I start looking for Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar collectibles and parts and anything I can find Indy. And I went there to find that kind of stuff, but I had one thing in mind that I needed to get, and it's related to last year's show. Stay tuned to the end of this episode to find out exactly what I bought last year, what I bought this year, and how they go together. So that was our Thursday night. We got in the Marketplace. We talked about our game plan on what was going to make a great show. So before the show started, weeks before the show started, I called the Atomic Autosports team together and I said, guys, we're investing money to go to PRI. We got travel, we've got missed time in the shop, we've got memberships, all that kind of stuff. We have to make the most of the show. And that's my pro tip to you. No matter what show you're going to, no matter what conference you're going to, you have to go in with a game plan. I do that with everything I attend. And that's exactly what we did for this show. Who do we want to meet with? Why do we want to meet with? What business problems do we have right now we want to solve? What racing problems do we have that we want to solve? Because everybody there at that event can help us with that. And I'm going to share you some very specific examples of what we came in with and what we left with. So like a lot of conferences, there's an app, there's a floor plan, there's information about the exhibitors. My advice, study all of that, put together a game plan and execute it. Because you know what happens? Those doors open, you hit the exhibit floor, and now you are lost. You're drowning in thousands of exhibitors, shiny things, show specials. If you don't have a game plan to get you back on track, you're going to go home and say, I didn't accomplish anything, but I saw cool stuff, which is still cool. But remember, we want to grow, we want to learn. So again, set goals, set meetings, and have clear desired outcomes from what you're doing. I also want to share, we've been a business member, like I said, since 2022, and there was a lot of confusion the first day. Apparently we didn't, although we were a business member, we weren't recognized as a business member in their system for that show. There were some things we should have been invited to that we couldn't get into. It was all solved by day two. PRI team, great, got us in there. But, you know, we use the members lounge for meetings with a lot of our partners and vendors that we use. And it's a great resource if you think about becoming a business member. So while it was a little frustrating the first day trying to work through those issues, we got them solved. And the PRI team said next year we are golden. Apparently they switched platforms. It made it a little bit of an issue for some of the members. PRI starts off on Thursday morning with a breakfast. Doors open at 6:30. And I got to tell you, when those doors open, that room is flooded. And the hotel or the convention center puts on a great breakfast for everybody. There's a lot of energy. There's stuff playing on the big screens. And Ralph Shaheen is usually the MC, has been for most of the years I've been going there. And then you have Michael Good, who does a great presentation. He's the president of PRI, working to get him on the podcast to do an episode as well. But the opening breakfast sets the tone for the entire show. And quite frankly, almost for the entire year. Here's what happens at the opening breakfast. You end up sitting at a table and you meet people from other areas of the country, other areas of racing. And that was exactly what happened this year. The team and I sat down with some folks from, I think it was New Zealand or Australia, and they work on sequential, easy for me to say, gearboxes for race cars. So they had a booth there, and they were trying to drum up some support. And then we met some folks from California that did a few different things, including very cool canopies that you use trackside. And they had their own race team as well. They were there to learn. So you never know who you're going to sit down with and meet. But here's what the breakfast is all about. It's about sharing great information. $69 billion. That's the racing industry impact the past year. That information was shared. They do Hall of Fame inductions for both a couple of the inductees, unfortunately passed away, but they were recognized and their families were there to be honored. And then there's always a keynote. I shouldn't call it a keynote, but an opening breakfast guest. This year, none other, Mario Andretti. Probably the biggest name in racing, right? Daytona 500 winner, Indianapolis 500 winner, and a Grand Prix champion. He's the only one that's ever gotten those three. He shared some funny stories about cars he had, experiences he had, how he came over to the United States and started racing, all the lessons learned. I didn't realize he raced a Hudson Hornet, right? I'm a big Cars fan, and we know Doc Hudson from that. Really, really neat thing. It really sets the energy for the day. And a quick story, a few years ago, Roger Penske was the featured guest at the breakfast, and we left Cleveland about 11:30 midnight, stopped in Columbus on the way to Indy to drop off a car, slept in the truck for about an hour before the doors opened on that breakfast. That's, to me, how important hearing those industry leaders is. And you really need the full 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to see it all, do it all. So why not start off with that included breakfast? A couple other things. I am big on the education component of PRI. And here's what I mean. The entire week is filled with learning opportunities, sessions, and they're very specific to track promoters, for example, sanctioning bodies, if that's your background. You can learn about setting up your car, brakes, tires, aerodynamics, and then there's business things that are covered as well. So this year I attended a lot of the business sessions. I'm going to tell you about a few of those because they were huge learning opportunities for me. One had to deal with artificial intelligence. You can't go anywhere without AI being part of the discussion, whether it's people making funny pictures at a holiday party or in a meeting, or using AI to help you craft a better email or perhaps write your life plan. But in this specific instance, there's two industry experts that one of them came from motorsports and is heavily involved in the motorsports industry. And they really gave a good perspective on how to use artificial intelligence to grow your business. After the presentation, I talked to one of the presenters and I said, listen, everything you presented, help me understand how to implement that. About a 4-minute conversation, boom. Now I fully understand how I can better use AI in my business and in my marketing. I've attended a lot of online sessions about AI, read a lot, listened a lot of podcasts about AI. No one ever explained it like that. And that's the power of learning, especially at PRI. There was a really cool panel discussion. Listen to this, folks. You want to talk about being in a cool room. There was the president of USAC. You had a higher up from NASCAR. You had NHRA represented. You had the president of SCCA, Sports Car Club of America, Mike Cobb. John Doonan from IMSA, the president of IMSA. All 5 of those people, one room on a panel, talking about how do we engage new young leadership in our sport and in our industry. It was a pinch me moment because here's why. I'm second row. It's a small, intimate room, too. It wasn't one of the huge rooms. They're all talking about their perspectives. And the big takeaway is we all need to work together. It doesn't matter if you like drag racing, roundy round stuff, road racing, autocross, grassroots, high level. It doesn't matter. We need to like all forms of motorsports. We need to support all motorsports organizations and companies that support us. But here's the really cool. I spent, probably 7-8 minutes after the presentation talking to Mike Cobb, the president of the SCCA. I'm the membership chair for our local region. I was sharing some ideas with him, and we ended up having a great conversation about pit race and what we need to do as racers, drivers, and those interested in our sport, what we need to do to make sure that pit race doesn't happen again. And there's some circumstances there that no matter what we did, probably wouldn't have been able to save pit race. But you want to know what those things are? We need to be at the track. We need to support the groups that are at the track. We need to support the vendors at the track. We need to promote what the track does. That's the simplest thing that we can do. And I think if we did those things, we're going to make the tracks and where we participate, where we play, even stronger. Another one of the sessions that was really interesting, there's a lot of talk all week about influencers and content creation. And as you walk a show floor like PRI, there's people walking around with all their little handheld cameras, big cameras. You got camera crews going. Everyone's creating content. Everyone's looking to get eyeballs on their stuff. But one of the sessions I attended was basically, how do these content creators and influencers really impact a business? And I attended it from 2 ways. One is, how can our businesses be using content creators and influencers a little bit more? But then if you take a look at like our Radar Racing program, what can we do to better support our partners and our sponsors that want eyeballs on their content? And here's an outcome I did not even expect from this session. So there was a couple manufacturers. They make products that racers use, and then the other 3 people were influencers, content creators. So there's a lot of back and forth about what the businesses look for versus how the content creators operate and what they're trying to do. And Brian from Atomic Autosports was sitting next to me, and he's looking up one of the content creators, huge YouTuber. And then afterwards, we approached him after the event. He gave us a few minutes of his time, and we solved an e-commerce issue that we've been having at Atomic Autosports. Who knew? Who knew that just by being in that room and Brian doing a little bit more research on some of the presenters gave us the idea that how are you doing this? Because this is something that we're struggling with. Where else is that going to happen, folks, other than PRI, where business, I like to say, gets done? Those are just some pretty cool things we attended. There was also opening night, Thursday night. They always have a happy hour for all the attendees, and then there's a little VIP section for the business members. And we were able to do some sim racing up there, and then also network with some other business members to understand what they're doing in the industry, how they're leveraging PRI to help them. And we got some good takeaways from just meeting some new people. Now I want to move on to the show floor. Some of the cool things that we were able to see and learn about, and some problems that we specifically solved. One of the exhibitors that caught my eye, so here's what I do. When I walk a show floor like PRI, if you've ever been around me, I walk quickly. Boom, 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 boom. I'm walking past booths. What applies to me? What applies to you, the listener? And the first booth that caught my eye on Thursday was Zaggy.ai. And there's a gentleman there. I'm going to work to get him on the podcast. He's developed an AI tool that you can dump your data into and then start asking it questions. So imagine that you're running an AIM data logger, for example. You could take all of your data out of those sessions, out of that race, out of that event, put it in there, and now you can ask it questions about where you could get better, what trends do you see, what if you look at the data traces, what's working, what's not. I think that is huge because he's just got the tip of the iceberg on this. There's a lot of places it could go. Now imagining dumping in data from you, another driver. Where are you guys the same? Where are you different? And where can you learn from one another? To me, that was absolutely huge. It's the first time I've heard about AI being used to look at driver and car data. So I can't wait to have him on, and he can do some deep dives into that. A couple problems that we were having on the Radar Racing team, there was two. And the first one's going to seem very simple to most of the listeners. Driver comfort. So we do endurance racing, and we have Paragon cooling systems in the car. That's where you have a cooler, basically with a pump in it, and you fill it with cold things like ice and water, and it pumps it through a shirt that you wear. That's the simplest thing. Well, we've tried frozen bottles of water, big ice chunks, small ice chunks, ice and water, and it just doesn't seem to work. So stopped by their booth, and they said, here's what you need to do. And they have these cool little gel packs. I already bought 25 of them for the race team. They're already delivered, and we're going to give it a try at our next event. But they gave us very specific information. Here's how you need to set it up. Here's how you need to freeze them. Here's the water level, exactly where it needs to be in there. In our racing program, it's really important because you run in the summer and it's very hot, and we have people that pay to race with us. I want to make sure those drivers are well taken care of and lots of comfort. So that was a huge win. Another thing for Radar Racing is we run rugged radios in the cars. Got them from Track First. They did a great job getting us set up. But one thing that we've learned is as the event goes on, sometimes communication falls off a little bit. Well, they're all battery-operated radios because we're running UHF and they don't have an in-car solution yet. It's on the works. Should be out first half of 2025. But in talking with one of their engineers at PRI, he said you need an extended life battery in the units that you're running in the cars because you can't swap those out quickly during a pit stop necessarily. So, wow. Because here's what happens. As the battery drains, the voltage or the wattage output lessens. So then that radio can't transmit as strongly as it did before. Simple solution, a few batteries, and we should have rock-solid communications all season long from our radio. And here's another really cool thing that we were able to put together while at PRI. Racekeeper. I've had Racekeeper on the podcast before. We're going to have him on again this coming season, because they have a cool new product called Racekeeper Connect. So if you know what Racekeeper is, it's a unit that goes in your vehicle, camera forward, camera backward, but not only is it capturing video, it's capturing a lot of data that you can use to make your driving better. So here's the cool thing. Now they have the ability to stream that data to the web so that we could do in-car footage, not only back to our pits, but also people at home, friends and family, sponsors that want to watch. You have the ability to do that now with this RaceKeeper Connect. Really excited to get this in the car, but here's how PRI helped put this together. So we've been kicking around RaceKeeper Connect. I got to see it at Nelson Ledges a little bit at the final SCCA race. Bill Stevens from RaceKeeper was there, and Bill's been a previous guest. He was the guy working for IBM that first did computerized lap timing at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Take a listen to that one. I love that episode, and I love Bill Stevens. Great guy. Anyways, at PRI, I was in the business lounge. We had a room reserved, and I had RaceKeeper. So it was Bill Stevens and their president. And then I had Chris from LMS EFI, who does all of our in-car data. He builds the electronic systems inside the cars. And I wanted to make sure that by putting this RaceKeeper in, the data from RaceKeeper that would be able to read the ECU data, and that the connections would work and the wiring would work. And I needed both of them in the same room to figure it out, make sure before we spent the money to buy RaceKeeper Connect, it worked. Sure enough, it did. And it was great to, we should have thought about this a little bit more. We actually did a little bit of a live demo from the meeting room. We should have publicized that and put that out, and some other folks could have seen it. So it was really good to put all of that together. We spent all day Thursday, all day Friday, going between sessions and walking the floor and having conversations with people. Now, Saturday is generally the day where people say, all right, packing it up. It's been a fun trip. I know the show's open 9 to 4, but we're heading home. Brian and I didn't do that. So all the other Atomic Autosports guys headed home. They had stuff to do for the weekend. They saw what they needed to see, and they accomplished the goals that we set. But Brian and I, we were in it for another day. And here's why. So I talked to you earlier about the coolest thing that happened at PRI. So I told you I was scouring Marketplace, and I found a Firestone IndyCar tire for sale in Indianapolis. And I messaged the guy Friday night, and I said, is it still available? Here's why I'm in town. Let's talk about some pricing on this thing. And we agreed to a price, and we agreed to meet Saturday morning by the Speedway. Here's why this is important for me to get it. If you know anything about IndyCar racing and Firestone, those tires are not available. Firestone owns those tires. So after a team is done with them, they go back to Firestone, they get looked at, and then they get shredded. So getting one is impossible. Here's why it's important to me. Last year, PRI, Chip Ganassi Racing, had a garage sale. And I got a Ford GT wheel that came off of one of their IMSA cars with a Michelin tire. It's a coffee table in my office. I also bought a wheel from Scott Dixon's Indy car. It had hit the wall at the Belle Isle race in 2022 because it was bent. It was not really bent, but because it was damaged, they take those out of commission. So I bought that wheel, just a wheel, no tire. How do I get an IndyCar Firestone tire? Can't do it. Talked to a lot of people. I had friends from Hoosier say, I can get you a hookup on a Hoosier. Friends at Goodyear said, we'll get you a Goodyear slick. It'll look good on there. This guy in Indianapolis, who actually lived in Medina, Ohio for quite a while, which is close to where I am, he had a display tire. There was 4 of them he originally had gotten. Somehow he'd gotten these from an IndyCar team. It was on one of the chassis that was rolled around to shows. Exactly the tire I needed. So it was great. Brian and I picked that up. It was a very snowy Saturday morning. Well, we had breakfast at Charlie Brown's. If you've been to Indianapolis and the main street next to the Speedway, Charlie Brown's, great breakfast place filled with tons of racing, specifically IndyCar stuff. And then we went over to the museum to take a quick picture with my Firestone tire, and then we headed to PRI. Saturday was the hustle day. Here's why. We learned so much Thursday and Friday that we had to go back and talk to more people we hadn't had a chance to talk with. And that was the get it done day was Saturday for us. So we sat down and had a meeting with the guys from SEMA Data to understand how their data offering can help some of the things that we're doing back at the shop. We went and had a great conversation with NASA, specifically the Great Lakes region, our shop, Atomic Auto Sports, is a certified NASA shop. We do logbooks. We get tech sheets done for their events. So we want to make sure we connected with NASA at that event because they have an awesome Trek, which is their endurance series, is going huge in 2026. We're going to have them on to talk about it. But we wanted to make sure that we made that connection, learned everything we could to make sure we can support the NASA membership great. And then we went over to Lucas Oil to see all the awesome trailers. And man, what a realization. The trailers are so cool and so expensive. So for now, I'm keeping my old trailer. But the part of the whole the area was all sim racing. They probably had to have 25 or 30 sim rigs set up, and then a couple other folks that make sim rigs had their little display set up. It was really cool to see all of that. They had a competition during PRI as well, simulated race competition. But the Goodyear had their hauler and had their display set up, and Jay Chapman, who was a recent guest here on the podcast, Brian, Jay, and I sat in the Goodyear hauler, which this is the hauler that goes to NASCAR races. This is like Operations Central. And we spent about 45 minutes talking to Jay about Goodyear racing, everything they're doing with tires, all their plans for 2026 as it relates to sports car racing. A lot of cool things going on. So stay tuned, stay close to Goodyear racing, and perhaps even another project that we'd love to be part of as it relates to the Sports Car Club of America, Goodyear, and Atomic Auto Sports. But then we stayed till about 4 o'clock, and that's when the show ended. We got over to the truck. Getting out of there was crazy. The snowfall was heavy, but we made it, and it took about 2.5 hours longer than expected to get home, but we got home safely, and it was an overall just a great show. So to recap, if you haven't been to PRI, find a way to get there. I understand there are time constraints and there are money constraints. If you can find a way to get there, I highly recommend it. You're going to learn so much. You're going to see people. You're going to meet organizations and companies that can help you along your motorsports journey. If you have a business, whether it's racing or not, even attending some of those seminars are going to help you grow and learn and be able to do even more. If you did attend PRI this past year, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out, whether it's on the socials, put a comment on one of our posts, or just reach out to me directly. I'd like to hear your feedback, what you liked about the show, what didn't, and of course, if you're going to be there next year, because I'd love to connect up with you at the 2026 PRI show and work together to see what we can do to make grassroots racing even better. Thanks so much for listening. I am super excited that you are involved in our sport. I'm super pumped about the next season. And as you work to get ready to get on grid, I have one favor to ask. Don't be late to grid.